Right. Hello, everyone. This is the second episode of the Humanity in Flow podcast. I am Liz Rothman. I'm an attorney and advisor specializing in a lot of work around intellectual property and technology and how all of these things relate to humanity and wellness as well. I am joined today by Dr. Manoj Montaji. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, sure. Thank you. It's good to be here. Yes, I'm the founder of Perfectly Here. I'm an organizational psychologist and have created my own methodology for mindful life optimization, which includes the relationship to planet, to systems, to human itself. And so we're trying to bring some solutions, address some issues, and see if we can be helpful to the community. Yeah.
Thank you for that introduction. And so we thought today we would just take a few minutes to talk about impermanence and the idea that there's a lot of big changes going on, and some institutions and structures that we've become very accustomed to over many decades now are changing rapidly right now with some of the political changes going on, and also just climate changes, world events happening all around the globe, and in particular in the US right now. And so we from that standpoint, maybe we'll take a look at some of the history and that some of these institutions that are currently changing a lot, especially this weekend with everything going on with USAID, and the possibility that many of the programs that provide humanitarian aid around the world, and also US outreach around the world may be discontinued in very short order of time. Today, also looking at things like the Department of Education in the United States and different institutions that are kind of just a lot of sudden, swift changes occurring, and a lot of emotion from people, and real concern around what will happen next, and maybe some kind of holding on to um, the stability that those organizations maybe have provided, and this kind of global sense of world order, perhaps is, from my point of view, that is kind of the global world order that developed after World War II of that may be shifting dramatically right now. So I wonder sort of what your thoughts are, where you think we may be going next, or advice for people that are struggling right now with this rapid sense of change, and how we can kind of manage it from a personal point of view, and what we could potentially do from a national and global point of view as well.
Right, right. Thank you for asking that. Yeah, it's really fascinating because nature, laws of nature that govern us, we sometimes kind of discount their presence and that it's not personal. Change is supposed to happen. It's just part of the laws and rules and so sometimes it's for the better, for sometimes it's for the worse. I mean, as far as the systemic way of natural things that happen. But then, we work so hard to create some stability for ourselves, and then it's crumbled. I mean, houses burn down, disasters happen, systems change, and we have no, agency or we feel like we don't have any role in those big changes, and anybody who can have a big role, powerful role, they are in control. And so while that's happening, while that's true is not made up, yeah, we humans, we can find a way inward and stabilize ourselves to just hang in there. It's like being in the storm. And if you can actually be present to that, oh, this is actually a storm and it's happening right now. What do I do to survive? Not only survive, but actually be okay, be least harmed, in a least way, amount. Um, and so we becoming just that present and aware and seeing what part is up to me, what part is not, what part is actually very harmful, what part is not. Not having a whole blanket statement or a perspective of disaster on top of some change.
Mhm.
Maybe looking at, what's there that's actually still working.
Right. And so we have things like the recent fires in LA and other natural disasters that are and clear, evidence of climate change, and that these disasters will happen more frequently. And then there's political chaos, right, that is kind of foisted upon us. And there are various ways that these kind of outside factors can affect people individually. And what you're saying is that there's no matter what the outside factor is, there are ways to kind of connect inward to minimize the impact on yourself and your psyche during that time. Is that right?
Right. Mhm. And there is this whole thing is about being able to, right? Being able to be wise, to be kind, and to be realistic. You
Mhm.
know, this impermanent thing is part of nature. We cannot control it for too long. We cannot keep it for too long. Systems, politics, even your own opinion. One minute you could have an opinion and be very, high strung on it, and the next minute you're like, oh, wait a minute, maybe not. One minute you like the cold, and the next minute you hate the cold. You know what I mean? You just it's
Yeah, and so this kind of Buddhist concept of impermanence and that the attachment to the things as they are is what causes suffering when it
as
changes.
they wanted to be, as we wanted to be. Yeah. I mean, it's true, difficulty is there, but for us to go up against the actual difficulty as if it should, I mean, it's happening.
Mhm.
It's like what I had a client one time who I was trying to explain this to him, and I said, if your phone drops right now and it gets damaged, you get upset about it, but then you're actually getting upset about the happening of this, which you cannot undo. You cannot go, it's a war you're going to lose. It's a
Getting upset at
battle war.
yourself for doing the thing
You're
that
going to
caused
lose.
the
You're not
damage.
going to win this
Yeah.
war. And he just
Right.
kind of thought, oh no, I'm a smart person. I don't want to lose a war. It
Yeah.
has dropped. It hit the ground.
Yeah.
And
This thing happened. So what is the next step that
yeah, right. So
yeah.
not to be complacent or like, oh, there's nothing to do, but also bringing some kindness to oneself. Being outraged, it really weakens our immune system, weakens our our clarity, our what do we do next? How do we take care of this next? But then, yeah, you're right. Impermanence happens. Some of it we like, some of it we don't like.
Mhm. Yeah. And if we just keep clinging or wishing we could roll back time, right, then that's not a path forward. There are real, sort of questions to what, can be done about these really, really big things, right? Like
Yeah.
climate issues that cause major natural disasters,
Right.
these massive political changes that will cause suffering around the world and in the US. Maybe perhaps some of them, they're could be benefits that come out of this, and there probably will be certain changes that are beneficial in the long run from these kind of really bureaucratic structures coming down, but they're coming down in such a dramatic and quick way for in such a way that is not nuanced in understanding any of the global programs that are funded or the effects that these cuts will have on
Yeah.
on
But also doesn't it give you kind of like a moment to reflect on, oh, I thought our system was really soundproof, the systems
I
we had
have,
created.
I have not thought that,
Oh,
and I've
they
been
were
telling
not
people that for a
soundproof.
long time. I've
Oh
been
my,
surprised that it has held up as well as it has
oh,
over the years, but I think that now we're going to see exactly how weak some of these
yeah.
actual checks and balances are. And so yeah, that's something that I've been, I think, trying to dispel the myths of for a while. But then again, things, kept going. It kept, kept functioning and sort of working for a long time. But with these kind of actions, I think we'll see exactly where there are still
Which
challenges.
tell me a little bit more about what system are you thinking that's not actually very well
Well, I
designed?
think like the checks and balances on US politics, I think is
Mhm.
the main one that, with these changes, there's people, a lot of trust in that there are laws and institutions that will stop
Ah,
dramatic changes from happening. And I think right now we're
that's
seeing,
what I thought.
yeah, yeah, I know. Unfortunately, I think it's, um, again, I've been sort of surprised over the last like 2 decades or so how well things have stood up because I think that there are not uh,
Hmm.
enough checks and balances in place that would prevent this kind of action from happening. And now we're seeing it. So we're going to see the real world,
Yeah.
repercussions of it too.
But also, there are countries like I was listening to this podcast from a university in Tehran, where the professor was talking about this climate change, the impact of climate change, and all the major rivers and mountains and streams that would come down from these mountains of because in Iran, from the south to north, there is a whole range of mountains, the biggest mountain range in Asia. Who knows these things? Nobody. That these provide streams of water going into the water system, lakes, and so, and he was talking about how many of them have become dysfunctional now, they're depleted now. And then he was talking about like a place who's really worse than even Iran, let's say Morocco, people living the way they do, needing the resources they do, they will need to have something like 30, 40, 50 times the amount of land they have to feed to actually be able to resource themselves. And
Mhm.
then there is a place in Bhutan, the way they live, their relationship to resources, their philosophy, their own way of relating to life itself, they need not only they need no more land and resources, they can actually provide for others, you know? So so all the systems that we talk about that are created, constructed by us,
Mhm.
they are their base, their foundation also is important that looking at our own human mind and how do we perceive things and the way we sometimes some policies I've come across like policies that would protect mentally ill, for example, against nursing and healthcare providers, right? That they could not you know, treat them roughly or with prejudice or anything like that. Now, because of this, mentally ill can beat up a nurse, for example, and the nurse cannot protect themselves. Mental health providers, they cannot protect. So it's like, how can we sit down and think about this? That when you are creating a policy to protect a group, you're not going to harm another group.
Yeah, there are a lot of examples like that, right? Where it creates a situation that, like, teachers are another example where teachers' hands are tied if students are violent or if they're really disrespectful. And I don't mean that in a sense of like there should be some sort of physical action, but they can't say or do almost anything
Right.
against
And
kids.
because of that, they get, yeah,
Yeah, the kids, yeah, are
right,
emboldened, right, to do more in
right.
those situations, and then especially when working with kids with special needs as well. And yeah, so that I think that these are all very complex issues, right?
So I
And
think this is why this a system would crumble
mhm.
and not work. Like, for example, if you think about chemistry or physics, right? It has its own laws. It works the way they do, all the rules and the always, everywhere, all the time, constantly, they will show up the way they were designed by nature, for example, right? It's not because the physics was wrong that for example, fire happened or a building, falls apart or something. So our rules and laws and things that we create or policies or procedures or systems we create, the closer they are to nature, the more I think durable
Yeah, it's a
they
good point,
may
and
withstand.
um, it's a difficult thing to do, I think, in a society when especially this evolving over hundreds of years, right? And I think, but it's a very, very interesting point that I guess the nature knows a lot about impermanence, right? Everything is sort of this flow and moves in its
Yeah.
own way. You know, take things like fires or floods or like nature's going to find a way, right? It's gonna move, and and we are the sort of beings in the that have tried to harness nature and move it to our to how we want it to be, but that uh the natural flow of things will sort of, we can control it to some extent, but not entirely. And if you kind of bring that into our laws and societal structures, that eventually there'll be shifts and movements that we have to adapt to, although they're largely being brought on by other people at the moment, right? Not in the same way that nature
Yeah.
would disrupt the where we're living or how or what we're doing.
Mm.
So yeah, but that's interesting to think about the durability of a system, and I think when we look at a lot of regulatory issues of like emerging technologies, so with like AI and different kind of emerging technologies, we're looking for really adaptable regulation and things that can move and change with how
Right.
they need to as society evolves. And perhaps there's an argument that some of the structures that are being brought down right now did not move and evolve in a way that kept them running and functioning in society very well. But we'll see as
Yeah. 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 I mean, we have to be open to see why. What is the purpose? What's the reason? What is actually intended? If you just think about like, oh, this is all greed, or that's all hatred, or that's malicious, or this is amazing kindness, or this is whatever. It's useful to go behind and just say, I mean, this is what I do. Why? Why? Why are they thinking this change? What is it gonna what outcome does it have? And
well,
I
you may or may not like the answer to it,
I
right? But
mean,
and then
yeah, but at least I don't want to just assume and just say, oh, it's because of profit. But there gotta be more to it. There's gotta be something else that's I mean, I'm optimistic, I'm hopeful, and I don't want to think like, everything that seems to be negative or not to our like way,
mhm.
it's not going my way, that's why it's negative, and then it's ill-intended. I don't know. I mean, I'm constantly looking.
Yeah, and
From the beginning, I went into psychology to figure out the human mind. Why do we think the way we do?
yeah.
You
Well, and then
know?
I think what's interesting about that is that things can be well intended but not well thought through, or
Advice.
if they don't
Yeah.
have the anticipate, like, so even if some
Yeah.
action is very well intended and we look at it and say, oh my God, why is that happening right now?
Yeah.
I think that this is going to end very differently. The person could have a good intention, even if the outcome then, we don't know
Yeah.
what the outcome will be of a
Yeah.
lot of this.
Right.
But the outcome, even if that person has a good intention, it doesn't mean that the outcome will be good, right?
Yeah.
The person could have a negative intention, still have a good outcome. And so it's
Right.
bit of a,
That's why the three qualities of being clear and realistic, having compassion and wisdom. If you just have one of them, is all rational, 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 you could be rigid and stubborn. This is the way it is. This is how we're going to do it. If you don't have enough the heart, the intelligence of the heart to tell you, wait, when we do that, that's going to end up here. It's going to be harmful, actually, not really helpful. Or if you have too much heart and too much compassion, and then you may be, suffering yourself or others. And then if you have too much like clarity and objectivity and realistic, like, oh, okay, this is what's happening. Okay, there's nothing we could do about it. You know what I mean? But
Mhm,
the balance in between can help us move in this flow that we want to be. That would be most beneficial for
mhm.
everybody involved, at
Yeah,
least.
I think that makes a lot of sense and is a good way to think about the current
So yeah,
momentum right
so
now.
thinking about that, I think it makes it simple so that we could say, oh, there is not enough heart in here. There's not
Mhm.
enough heart
Yeah,
intelligence.
yeah, and
There's,
everything is happening so quickly right now, and that it is, and I think that will only maybe increase or continue in the next
yeah,
coming
yeah.
in this year especially, but in the coming years as well.
Hopefully
Uh,
we can just talk about some things that can help people reflect and kind of reflect on it and see for themselves what might be beneficial.
yeah, I think we should keep having these conversations.
Yeah. Thank you
Thank you
so
for,
much.
yeah, thank you for doing this today, and we will be back next time.
Yes. See you later.